Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 8th of February 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So apologies for missing the last couple of days of refuels, guys. I had personal reasons for that, which I kind of talked about briefly in the Discord channel, but I am back today with an extra long episode. I have so much to get through. You can see from my tabs that I have open here, so much has happened over the last 4 or 5 days, I guess you could say. So let's get right into it. So first up, we have that the Shapella or Shanghai/Capella hard fork was hit on the Zhejiang testnet. So withdrawals and BLS changes are already included in the first slot here, and full and partial withdrawals have both been processed. So there's some screenshots here from Barnabas, who's been obviously tweeting about this quite a lot recently. And there's also a thing you can look at on the Beacon Chain website called Validator Withdrawals or Withdrawals. It's a dedicated section to the withdrawals that are being done on the Zhejiang testnet here. This is what it will look like, with probably some changes when it goes live on mainnet, and different explorers will have different ways of displaying this information, and I'm sure they're going to be splitting them out into full and partial withdrawals as well. But yeah, everything seems to have gone quite well. There doesn't seem to be any major bugs or anything like that. I haven't seen anything myself, and this was, as I mentioned, the first kind of like new public testnet to be spun up for this, and hopefully by the end of this month, we're on track still, I believe, to begin forking the two public test nets, which are obviously Girly and Sepolia. And then after that, we'll set a mainnet date, or maybe even during that, we'll set a mainnet date, which is still due in late March, maybe early April, but it's looking more like late March, right? And then withdrawals are live, and then I guess we'll see what happens from there, because there's still a lot of opinions out there of what's going to happen, not just with the price of ETH, but what's going to happen to the amount of ETH that's staked. Is it going to be more? Is it going to be less? What's going to happen in the LSD space? Is Lido's dominance going to grow, or is it going to come down? Is Rocket Pool's dominance going to grow, or is it going to come down? Are solo stakers going to go with one of these LSD services? Solo stakers going to spin up, something like a Stakewise V3 node or something like that? We don't know, right? But we obviously need withdrawals in place for any of that stuff to happen. So that's why I think the majority of people are super excited about it. I mean, if I had to pick one reason why I'm excited about it, it really is just because it completes the rollout of proof of stake on Ethereum. I've said since the merge that we weren't fully proof of stake yet, right? We were like 95% there, but we weren't 100% there. Now, with withdrawals being enabled, we are definitely 100% there in terms of having a full proof of stake implementation on Ethereum. Now, does that mean proof of stake on Ethereum is 100% finished? No. There's still things that are going to be changed in the future. We have things like SSLE and a bunch of other upgrades as well that will hopefully come. We don't know when, but those have been on the table for quite a while, and they're still in active research and some development there phases as well. So yeah, but in terms of having a full proof of stake implementation on Ethereum, that will happen once withdrawals are enabled. So great to see that the Zhejiang testnet fork went all well and good, and obviously this testnet will be monitored and tested as much as it can be, and for I guess like the remainder of this month until we start forking the public testnets over. All right, so the EF Ecosystem Support Program posted their first grantee roundup of the year, and they say here, this time we're checking in on Magma Collective's Dark Crystal, ETHStaker, Radius's MEV-resistant AMM, and Zeitgeist to learn more about the strides they've made over the past couple of months. So that's the projects that they're focusing on, or the community efforts that they're focusing on in this update, which you can give a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But great to see this. And, it's pretty cool because these are some of the, I guess, everyone knows ETHStaker, right? I mean, by this point, everyone would know what ETHStaker is. It's a staking community on Ethereum in a nutshell. But there are other projects here which you may not have heard of before, such as Dark Crystal, which is a key management solution. Or you've got the MEV-resistant AMM by Radius, which is pretty cool as well, because that's been a topic that's been discussed for quite a while. I remember Justin Drake discussing this years ago on the Bankless podcast. And then you have something called Zeitgeist, which is a lab for crypto native products and protocols. So these sorts of things are stuff that you may not hear too much about, but is being funded out of the Ethereum Foundation treasury. And they don't just fund these projects, they fund a number of different projects. And it may be worth kind of diving deep into this and seeing how they're going, seeing what the progress of their project is, and seeing if it's something that you might be interested in getting involved with as well. So I'll of course link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But yeah, you can dive deep on these things, and I'm sure it'll keep you busy for a little while. All right, so a big announcement out of Lido. I think this was yesterday. So Lido announced something called Lido V2, which is their largest upgrade to date and an important step towards further decentralization. So they've said here Lido V2 is centered around two major upgrades. The first upgrade is a new staking router, which is a new modular architecture that allows anyone, including solo stakers, to become a node operator. Now, this is very similar to what StakeWise wants to do with their V3, where essentially allow solo stakers to become a node operator and then get an LSD on their solo stake. In this case, it would be ST ETH for Lido. In Stakewise's case, it's OS ETH. And the second major upgrade here is withdrawals, an upgrade allowing ST ETH holders to withdraw directly from the beacon chain. Now, obviously, that's the less, I guess, interesting upgrade because we all knew that had to happen anyway. So that first upgrade there, I think, is quite interesting. Now, does this mean that Lido is going to be as decentralized as Rocketpool or any or as decentralized as any other decentralized staking solutions out there? Which, I mean, there's really only Rocketpool right now. I know, as I said, Stakewise is trying to be that, but no, I don't think so. I think that this is a really great step towards getting more people to become Lido node operators, obviously distributing that set out, but there are still a lot of centralizing forces to that, and doing it in a Sybil-resistant way is quite difficult. And I've seen a few discussion points on this and a few threads by some of the Rocketpool community on this that you can go search out for yourself. Unfortunately, I don't have them handy, but you'll find them on Twitter or in the Rocketpool Discord. But yeah, it's always good to challenge the claims whenever a project says that they're going towards further decentralization, because this terminology has been used a lot by projects in the past and has been abused by them as well. I'm not saying Lido has done this specifically. I'm actually not, it's funny. There's like a split in the community between, who likes Lido, who doesn't, who defends them, who doesn't. I've gone on record before of thinking Lido is overall a net positive, even though there are lots of things that I think that they could improve on. And obviously, I think that them having such a large market share is not healthy, but I don't think they're like this massive negative that some of the community seems to think. But that's fine. Like, there has to be those differences in opinions, and those people definitely put the pressure on to get Lido to move towards a more decentralized state. So any way that they can do that, I think, is very, very welcome. And this is just one way they're doing it with V2 here. And you can see that there's a thread here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below, about how this all works. But there's also a nice graphic here of how this would actually work. So this is going to be able to be used in conjunction with DVT technology as well, which is something that Lido has been piloting for a little while now with Obel Labs, which is super exciting. But essentially, what they're trying to do here is make it so that they get rid of that choke point right now, or at least improve on that choke point right now, which is the fact that they have a very small node operator set compared to something like Rocketpool, which has over 2,000 node operators, right? Whereas Lido has, I think, 29 or 28 last time I checked, and they want to be able to scale that up without having to go through the KYC process, without having to go through a manual onboarding process, which is what they've done in the past. And doing this and offering, ways for solo stakers to get involved is one way of doing that. Now, this isn't live yet. Obviously, this is just a kind of proposal that's been put forward to the community, to the DAO, to vote on this. But I think it's a really, really great step forward for Lido. And it's competition for all the decentralized services as well, because obviously Rocketpool is still the only decentralized staking pool right now, and it's the one that's actually truly decentralized. But I think it challenges Rocketpool to keep improving, to keep scaling, to keep becoming more efficient, to do a lot of more things that they probably haven't done in the past. They've gotten a lot better on, they being, I guess, like the community and the team have gotten a lot better at it over the last year. I remember probably 6 to 12 months ago, I was pretty critical of Rocketpool because they weren't doing much marketing, they weren't doing much business development, and that's why they weren't growing, or at least one of the reasons why I thought they weren't growing. And they've done a lot of that, I think, since then. And they've also done a lot to improve the protocol itself, and they've got that big LEB8 upgrade coming soon, which will allow more people to obviously stake with less ETH, right? They only need 8 ETH instead of 16 ETH to spin up a mini pool. So that's all very, very encouraging. But I honestly think that as much as the Rocketpool community is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very, I've lost the word on me, but I should say very excited. They're very excited about Rocketpool. They're very excited about growing the protocol. I think that Lido has been a positive in that it's really kicked them up the butt, right? Just like how Alt L1s really kicked the Ethereum scaling stuff into high gear, where essentially all these Alt L1s were getting all the attention because Ethereum layer 2s weren't exactly live yet. and Ethereum layer 1 fees were obviously really, really high, this competition is always a net positive here. So I think that Lido's V2 will definitely cause the Rocket Pool community to move faster, move better here. Not just them, but like all staking services, because at the end of the day, they're all competing with each other. It doesn't matter what anyone says. Like, people can say, oh, we're all in this together, blah, blah, blah. I've never believed that to be true. I always thought that was a psyop, no matter who said it. At the end of the day, businesses compete with each other, and that's what these things are. Just because they're on-chain protocols or they call themselves DAOs doesn't really mean anything in my eyes. Doesn't really change the fact that they're a business. And at the end of the day, it's funny because you could say that, like, Lido, for example, they're a business. They have the LDO token attached to it, and people expect the LDO token to go up in value based on a number of different factors. Same is true for pretty much any project in crypto. Now, tokens will go up for different reasons. They have different utility, but at the end of the day, they all look like businesses to me. There are people that have a quote-unquote share in the company. I know I'm going to start sounding like a securities lawyer right now, but there are people that have a share in the company, or a share in the protocol, I should say, that hold a token. They definitely are holding that because they expect it to go up in value. They're not buying this thing just for the sake of it, right? And they may put in their own effort to make that happen, or they may just sit on it, and then the efforts of others will make the token go up in value, or potentially make it go up in value. Again, I'm starting to sound like a securities lawyer, but that's how I view these things, right? And I've said before that a lot of the protocols, especially things like staking protocols and DAOs and DeFi and things like that, they are definitely like what businesses are in the real world, or I guess like in the traditional world, the non-crypto world, and they function very similarly, and they have the same incentives. But anyway, I'm going to digress on that point. You can go read Lido's blog post and tweet thread for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so speaking of staking, I put out this tweet a couple of days ago where I said, did you know that there were 218,000 new Ethereum validators, almost 7 million ETH worth, that were spun up in 2022 alone? This was roughly the same number of validators that were spun up in 2021. Bull or bear, the demand for ETH staking is insatiable. Now, I put this tweet out because of all the people that are still going on about how the, withdrawals upgrade is going to lead to a mass unlock of ETH, and everyone's going to sell, and ETH's going to go to zero, blah, blah, blah. Which just isn't true. Like, I've gone through this many times. I'm not going to rehash what I'm saying here, but just looking at rehash what I've said before, but just looking at this kind of stat that I've pulled here, the 218,000. I mean, there's over 500,000 validators. I think there's 513,000 validators right now. So that's almost half of the total Ethereum validators were spun up during the bear market, right? And you can actually see here on the chart the places that it actually accelerated at. So here we went from 300,000 total validators in March of 2022 to 400,000 in June of 2022. So we had 100,000 validators spin up during the period where ETH was going down only. Like, for those of you who remember, ETH bottomed at 880 in June, right? So all this ETH was actually being added during that period. And then another spike came during the merge event. Not as violent as a spike, or not as big as a spike, but there is a little bit of a noticeable spike there. But the point I'm trying to make here is that in a bear market, there has still been a crap ton of ETH staked. In the bull market was roughly the same amount of ETH staked. So it doesn't really matter. I really do think that people staking, or at least a lot of them staking, are not as sensitive to the price as people think they are. And if they are, they can actually exit via LSDs. Now, I know with LSDs, especially pre-withdrawals, they can trade at a discount or premium. Right now, all the LSDs are either at fair value, at an extremely small discount, or at a premium. None of them are at big discounts. Not even CB ETH, which was at 0.93 or 0.92 ETH, it is now at fair value. So if there was this mass exodus or this mass, amount of stakers that wanted to exit, then those things would be at a discount, because those stakers, 70% of ETH staked is part of LSDs, they would be selling. But there's not that, right? All there is people wanting to stake their ETH, wanting to hold their LSDs, wanting to do things with them, wanting to put them in DeFi, all that good stuff there. So again, I really don't understand where all these bearish takes are coming from people around withdrawals being enabled. I think it's an incredibly bullish event. I obviously don't know what's going to happen with the price short term, because that's all speculator driven, but I don't think it's a negative thing for the price. And I honestly think that if the price really just remains flat through it, people are going to be like, oh my God, what? Where's the dump, right? And then we may see positive price action then, because that's typically how these things go. But at the same time, I don't know if anyone's really trying to trade this stuff. It might be too soon as well. Usually these things happen within a few weeks of the actual event, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Anyway, I told you I didn't want to rehash everything that I've said before, so I'm going to leave that one at that for now. I think I got a couple more things, or one more thing about staking that I wanted to highlight, which is a tweet from Superphiz who said, you want easier staking on the Ethereum beacon chain? These are the best directions to push in. And he's got a list of different solutions here. One of them is Nice Node, which is a simple node management kit. Rocketpool obviously has a simple installation interface called the Smart Node stack. You have Ethereum, which is managing staking from Windows. Dap Node gives you a web UI, and Avado also gives you a web UI. So staking is becoming easier over time. Solo staking and staking as part of decentralized pools is becoming easier over time. And definitely going to get, much easier post withdrawals as well, because there's going to be able to be that kind of like, reshuffling or great reshuffling of stake, which will encourage people to build out easier tools for people to do this and stuff like that. So I'm definitely looking forward to all of that. But yeah, I'll link Superphiz's tweet in the YouTube description below, and you can check out these solutions for yourself. All right, Hildobby put out a screenshot of a Dune dashboard called the Ethereum gas dashboard here, and he said, ever since the Ethereum merge, gas prices have been on an uptrend, and you can see here that pretty much has been on an uptrend, except I guess like a few days or a couple of weeks after the merge, but since basically the start of October until today, gas prices have been trending up on layer 1 again. And currently, I believe Gwei is about 25, according to the block native extension that I have right now. And we're well above the ultrasound barrier. I mean, the ultrasound barrier is what, 17 Gwei, like 16.4 Gwei or something like that, which means that we've been in net deflationary territory for a little while now. I think 3 weeks in a row, and we're at negative 11,000 ETH issued since the merge here. And if demand keeps up from here, it's going to be very hard to go back into inflationary territory, because it's much easier to burn ETH than it is to issue it. And I've talked about this before, but I think people really underestimate that. And I've also talked about how I think that deflationary ETH is definitely not something that people should get hung up on and pin all their hopes and dreams on, but it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on, because as I've said, multiple times on the Refuel, I believe that fee revenue of a blockchain is the best indicator of demand, because it is very hard to fake it, if not impossible, because there's an actual cost to it, especially on Ethereum layer 1 where the cost is so high. So I think that looking at the fact that median gas price has been trending up since the merge, and so has, I guess, like price generally across the board, not just with ETH, but with other things, activity generally up, it points to a very healthy kind of a return of demand here, which is really, really cool to see. But yeah, if you want to check out this dashboard for yourself, Hildobby has linked it in his tweet thread. This dashboard also is part of, this dashboard also has other charts and metrics on it as well, all about Ethereum gas, which you can go check out for yourself. As I said, will be linked in the YouTube description below. All right, Tony from the Mev-boost.pix website here has highlighted that relay diversity is improving. So Flashbots' relay share reduced to 50%, and ultrasound and agnostic relays saw big gains. Major builders such as Builder 0x69, Beaver Build, and Flashbots have contributed to the improved diversity by submitting blocks to those new relays. And you can see here the chart. Now, I believe I highlighted this last week, and I kind of went through this on the Mev-boost .pix website, which you can check out yourself as well. But this is awesome. I mean, Flashbots went from 97% dominance, I think, at one point in terms of not total blocks, but MEV boosted blocks. And now they're basically much lower than that. I think I don't know off the top of my head what they are of just MEV boosted blocks, but of total blocks, they are only at 50%. Whereas Bloxroute obviously has grown a lot, but so has Ultrasound Money and the Agnostic Relay, along with Block Native as well, as you can see here. Those seem to be the top 5 relays right now, and then there are smaller ones like Manifold, Eden, and a few others there as well. But it's great. I love the fact that instead of one dominant one, we now have a much healthier relayer kind of ecosystem. It's better, obviously, for censorship resistance. Not all of these non-censoring. Only ultrasound money and Gnosis as the kind of in the top 5 here are non-censoring. Oh, and Blocktrout obviously max profit, whereas Flashbots and Block Native is still censoring. But that's fine. As I've said plenty of times before, as long as we have a balance here, as long as we don't have just Flashbots dominating everything, it's totally fine. At least for Tornado Cash stuff. It becomes a problem when, or if something like a Uniswap was to get censored, and then it would very much degrade the user experience. But at the same time, we're not there yet, so I think that we're setting up the defenses for a possible future that may entail, but we're not there right now. So yeah, but just great to see this. Thanks to Tony for highlighting it. All right, so the Woo Blockchain Twitter account here posted a, I guess, like press release where Visa said that they've been testing how to actually accept settlement payments from issuers in USDC, starting on Ethereum and paying out in USDC on Ethereum. And these are large value settlement payments. Now, this is a article that was posted on Cointelegraph.com, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you. But I believe that this was said at the StarkWare conference or Starknet conference. Here, and there's a screenshot here of Q Sheffield, who is the head of crypto at Visa, talking about this. But this is great. This is exactly what the, I guess, Ethereum as a settlement layer thesis is all about, is where these traditional finance players are going to begin settling things on Ethereum, but not only settling things that they do in the traditional finance system, but settling things like USDC, which is obviously crypto native. Now, yes, obviously USDC is just an IOU that represents dollars in a bank account, but it is still very powerful because it's already got a massive network effect and already integrated into so much of the Ethereum ecosystem and even beyond that. So Visa getting involved here and doing large value settlement payments makes a lot of sense. And it makes even more sense because even if the fees go really high, like let's just say we get 100 Gwei sustained fees again, to send USDC on layer 1, or send an ERC20 token on layer 1 at that fee amount doesn't cost that much. Like if let's just say that Visa is settling $100 million on chain, they're going to be fine paying, even if it's not going to be this much, but they're going to be fine paying hundreds of dollars of transaction fees, because what they get in return for that is an incredible amount of visibility over the settlement process, incredible settlement guarantees from the Ethereum network, and an ability to do things in a much more efficient way, which saves them so much more money than they'd be spending on fees here. And that's why I've said in the past that Ethereum layer 1 will eventually become a layer for all settlement transactions, and it will become a layer for these bigger players, and layer 2s will be where the everyday user sits, because at the end of the day, like the layer 1 is going to price out people no matter what. There is no way we're going to be able to build 99% of things on layer 1, and we're not going to be able to have 99% of users on layer 1, which is totally fine because we have layer 2s and they're improving all the time, and I've gone through all that plenty of times before, but this just really speaks to the sentiment layer thesis that I've had for Ethereum for quite a while, and great to see Visa continuing to experiment on Ethereum and getting involved there. Anyway, I'll link the article in the YouTube description and you can go check it out for yourself. All right, so just a shout out here, Josh Stark put out a tweet where he said there's 3 weeks left to apply for the Ethereum Foundation's Academics Grants Round. It's open to a wide range of academic domains from P2P networking to history. $1 million worth of funds are available, applications due Feb 27th. And if you want inspiration, you can check out the wish list items in these screenshots, which of course I'll link in the YouTube description below. I believe I've shouted this out before, but just wanted to give a reminder this is ending in a few weeks here, so definitely go check this out. Will be linked in the YouTube description below. All right, so a really big announcement out of Arbitrum yesterday. So they have announced something called Stylus. So what Stylus is and what Arbitrum's calling it is its next-gen programming environment deploying later this year, and they're actually calling it something, or they're nicknaming it EVM Plus. Now, the highlights from this announcement basically are listed here. So basically in the tweet they said, through the power of WebAssembly smart contracts, users will be able to deploy programs written in their favorite programming languages, such as Rust, C, C++, and more. So they're bringing all these languages that typically haven't been brought into crypto, or at least on Ethereum, to Ethereum, which is obviously really, really cool and positive here. Now, by allowing them to do this, by doing this, this allows Arbitrum to scale even more. So Arbitrum says here, with last year's Nitro upgrade, the Arbitrum network saw the Arbitrum 1 network saw a 10 times performance boost. With Stylus, they say they're proud to say they've done it again. Arbitrum dApps written in Stylus are over an order of magnitude faster than their Solidity counterparts, which means they're 100 times faster than their Solidity counterparts, which means that cheaper fees, even cheaper fees, are coming to Arbitrum than what has been possible before, on top of the fact that this is going to attract a lot of new developers to Arbitrum that may not want to code in Solidity. They may want to code in a different language that they're used to here, which is, I mean, incredibly big, right? This is actually really big news. And for the developers out there, you'll know just how big this news is. But as I said, if you're not a developer, all you need to know is that, and if you're just a regular user, all you really need to know is that more developers are going to be able to build cooler apps on Arbitrum 1 and Arbitrum Nova as well. And it's going to lead to massive performance improvements on both of those networks, which is going to lead to lower fees for users. And this is all, not even including EIP 4844. So once that's deployed, we're going to see some really, really low fees, right, on these on Arbitrum specifically, and on the other layer 2s as well. But on Arbitrum 1 specifically, we're going to see some incredibly low fees for a full roll-up, right? Which is just incredible. And, you know, this is what I've said before about how these layer 2s, they don't have to wait for layer 1 to scale. They can scale on their own as long as they're still a roll-up by posting data and proofs to Ethereum layer 1. They can keep scaling on their own, and they're going to keep doing that. Obviously, Optimism has their own approach here and doing their own thing. Arbitrum's doing their own thing. Other layer 2s are doing their own thing. The ZKVM teams are all doing their own thing, right? So yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of give I guess illustrate how big of a deal this is, and you can go read the blog post for yourself to get more detail here. But that's the TLDR basically. Massive performance improvements, more devs coming to the Arbitrum ecosystem, leading to cheaper fees for end users. This will happen over time, so it's obviously not going to happen overnight, but definitely something that is very welcome for Arbitrum here. All right, so speaking of layer 2s and news, so I mentioned before how StarkWare had their StarkWare Sessions event in Tel Aviv over, I guess, like the last few days. So the biggest announcement out of that event was that they're open sourcing their Starknet Prover here. So the Prover isn't open sourced yet, but they've announced plans that they're going to open source it soon, I believe. And the Prover, for those of you who don't know, is basically the thing that makes these ZK EVMs, or I guess like ZK rollups, tick. It basically runs the computation in order to generate the ZK proof, or the validity proof, I should say, which is the more accurate terminology, in order to make these things work. And as StarkWare said here, the TLDR is that the prover will be open source under the Apache 2.0 license, which means it's fully open source for everyone to use. The move will boost accessibility to developers, promote collaboration within the community, and offer other benefits. This announcement obviously follows the open sourcing of Cairo 1.0, the Papyrus full node, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, and Starknet's new sequencer as well. So as I said, I don't believe it's open source yet, but it's going to be open source soon. I actually, because in the announcement it's kind of confusing. They say that they say it will be open sourced, available under Apache 2.0, and then some people took that to mean that it is open source right now. No, it's going to be open source soon in the future, which is obviously great that they just announced this and said that it's going to be open source to begin with. But great to see this out of the StarkWare ecosystem here. Now, speaking of provers. The one thing about provers is that they are very computationally expensive, and by very, I mean very. Like, Scroll put out a tweet thread about how the improvements that they've made to their ZKVM over the last few months, and one of those improvements was a massive reduction in the memory usage that was required to generate to run a prover to generate those proofs. Now, what was that memory requirement? Well, you can see here that they were able to lower the prover memory requirement, memory being RAM here, not hard disk space. I'm talking RAM, from 870 gig, right, to 275 gigabytes. This is RAM. So that's still obviously a tall order there. I mean, 275 gigabytes of RAM is not consumer grade stuff. Consumer grade stuff is really 64 gig or below is what I would say. Even 64 gig is pushing it. It's still quite expensive, but I think, obviously memory costs are coming down over time too, but the fact that it was at 870 gigabytes, and I think it started at over a terabyte, obviously prices out the majority of people here. In saying that, The prover model is kind of a one of n trust assumption where you only need one prover in order to generate the proof. And obviously that's not good for liveness and redundancy, but for security, it's fine. So even if there was only one prover and you assume that that prover is honest and live and will keep generating the proofs, everything's fine, right? But obviously the problem becomes is there's liveness issues with that, and there's also a kind of trust issues with the fact that how can you trust that they're going to be live when you need them to be live, and redundancy as well. Maybe they go offline, no fault of their own, and it takes them a while to come back online, which brings the network to a halt or to a crawl, and then someone else needs to spin up a prover if there isn't other provers. So getting that memory requirement down as much as possible, not just the memory requirement, but the hardware requirements in general, is critically important for ensuring the reliability and I guess like anti-fragility of these networks. Yeah, so yeah, but that's great that they did such a huge improvement, right? Going from 870 gig to 275 gig, which is a 68% improvement here, just shows me that there is even more improvements to come. And this is what I was talking about last week about how when you get to a point where you've built out these things and you go from, I guess, like building out new features or trying to build out the thing from scratch, you start optimizing. And optimizations can lead to massive performance improvements across the board, which is exactly what Scroll has done here. So I'm looking forward to Scroll getting that down even more. And not just them, obviously all the ZK teams needing to get that down as much as possible and getting the prover to at least 64 gig memory or below, I think is definitely where it should be. And I think they can definitely get to that, but just getting it down from over 1 terabyte to 275 gig is a massive achievement. So kudos to Scroll for that, and keep up the good work there. All right, so I spoke just before about how StarkWare talked about this Papyrus full node that they released. So basically, you'll be able to run your own Starknet full node called Papyrus or Papyrus. I'm pronouncing it wrong here. And Ethereum on ARM is right on the ball here, where they've got this Papyrus client syncing on ARM, and they are starting to test Ethereum layer 2 nodes with their architecture here. So very, very cool to see this as well. I mean, running layer 2 nodes and validators and sequencers and provers, there's definitely something that's going to become a massive industry in of itself. Not to mention things like the ASICs that are being made for these things, specifically for these things from companies like Ingonyama. This is going to be a huge industry, both hardware and software wise. It's going to be an absolutely massive industry, and I'm looking forward to running all these things myself. I have plenty of hardware to run this stuff on. Even if I'm doing it from an altruistic perspective, I think it'd be really cool to do this, really cool to learn new things and to help these networks grow and decentralized and become more resilient over time as well. So great to see Ethereum on ARM testing this out here. You can do it. I think you can test it out for yourself if you want as well. If you just search Starknet Papyrus on Google or something, it'll bring you to the relevant information that you need there. All right, so Zefram from the Timeless Finance and SudoSwap team introduced something over the weekend called the Universal Bridge, which is a unified interface for sending messages from Ethereum to other chains and rollups. It lets you implement things like cross-chain governance without relying on third-party protocols like Layer 0. So how does this actually work? It basically wraps around the official bridges of the supported networks such that you can send a message to any network using the same simple interface. This makes the development experience much better. And this makes the universal bridge as secure as the official bridges, which is good for rollups like Arbitrum and Optimism. And why did they do this? Because the official bridges share the same security guarantees as the rollups themselves, making them as secure as they can be. And then Zefram continues and says the Universal Bridge only supports one-way messaging from Ethereum to other networks, so it is less capable than omni-chain solutions, but it is still useful for use cases like cross-chain governance, which I think is really a really cool use case, actually. So I've spoken about these tools before, this kind of cross-chain arbitrary message parsing, and there are different ways to do it. There's obviously, just unidirectional, where you just go from Ethereum mainnet to another chain or to layer 2s. Then there is bidirectional or omni-chain, where you can pass messages from Ethereum to Arbitrum or to Optimism, and then from Arbitrum and Optimism to Ethereum, and then Optimism to Arbitrum. You get where I'm going with this, right? That's where we need to go to enable all of those great features that we want, like cross-chain composability and atomicity and cross-chain flash loan, stuff like that. Definitely where we want to be. And there's lots of these solutions coming online now. I've discussed a bunch of them. There was Herodotus the other day that I discussed, and now Universal Bridge, StarkWare DAMM, someone was doing the implementation of that. There's plenty of these tools coming and building out over time, and we're going to definitely get some of these in production-ready states where users can take full advantage of them in the near future. All right, Mean Finance has announced something that they've been working on for quite some time, which is called the Meta Aggregator. So they are supporting 22 chains with this aggregator, 9 different sources of liquidity, transaction simulations, buy orders, swap and transfers, and no extra fees. So you can jump to mean.finance.swap to check this out. Now, for those of you who don't remember what Mean Finance is, it is a DCA protocol. So it allows you to automate your dollar cost averaging into Ethereum, into ETH or into some other asset or whatever asset you want to go into. And now they're doing it by, I guess, like supporting all these different networks here. So if you go to the website, you can actually see, if you connect your wallet, I'll just connect Sassel.eth here to this website. You can choose your network up the top. So right now I'm on Ethereum, but they have all of these chains right now that they're supporting. I believe all of these chains are EVM chains, which makes sense. And you can select what you want. So you want to go from ETH, or you want to go from USDC to ETH. You want to go from whatever token. I mean, I have a bunch of tokens here, but let's just say I want to go from, where is USDC on this list? Let me just type in USDC. Go from, I don't have much USDC here. Go from that to ETH, of course, what I do all the time, and then you can kind of simulate that transaction as well, and you can, I guess, like, let me put in a number here, 0.5 USDC. I don't really have much USDC here. It tells you how much ETH you're going to receive from that. It's going to tell you, find you the best route as well, and you can select which route you want to go with. So it's basically an aggregator for DCAing in, which is obviously very cool here. Now that's on Ethereum, whereas I can choose another network. So I can choose Arbitrum and see and choose obviously USDC on Arbitrum here. Here we go, USDC, and put in a number. I don't think I have any USDC on Arbitrum. And then this will also simulate and find the best route for me as well on Arbitrum. So very, very cool to see this. Obviously, it's going to be cheaper to do DCAing on layer 2s than it is on layer 1. So if you're DCAing only a relatively small amount, say you're doing $100 a week or something, or $50 to $100 a week, it's obviously going to make sense for you to do that at layer 2 rather than layer 1. Because the layer 1 gas fees are going to eat into that and probably eat, 5 to 10% of that value there. So yeah, you can go check this out for yourself. We'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so we have an update, or I guess an announcement out of Element Finance. So they've announced something called Hyperdrive, which is the next research leap from the Element Finance team on variable and fixed rate primitives. No preset expiration dates, no fragmented liquidity, and no LP rollovers, aka everlasting liquidity, a concept so powerful you have to experience it yourself. So what Hyperdrive introduces is something called Market Sentiment Indicator, or MSI, for DeFi interest rates. It is a balanced system of longs and shorts that captures the wisdom of the crowd. There's fixed rates under the hood, but there is so much more, which you can read about here, obviously, on I believe this is the blog post, or I guess this is the website about Hyperdrive and how it actually works and functions in practice. But they also go into detail in the thread where they said, the fixed rate is the market sentiment indicator. If it doesn't exactly equal the average variable rate, there is a profit to be made. Who makes the volatility profit? You can. Being on CT 24/7, you know where rates will go. And don't sell yourself short. You can short the fixed rate when it's low instead. Long the fixed rate when the MSI is high, and beat the variable rates in DeFi with less variability. So essentially what this allows you to do is bet on where rates are going to go, right? And you can bet on that based on, I guess, sentiment of crypto Twitter, sentiment of the market generally. Like, are rates going to go up? Are they going to go down? You bet on it, you capture a profit on the spread. At least that's my understanding of how this works. Now, I'm not going to do, obviously, a whole breakdown here. You can read about it all for yourself with pretty pictures, pretty graphs and stuff like that on this website, which of course I'll link in the YouTube description below. But great to see Element Finance continuing to innovate on their core primitives here, because we need more of this. As I've said plenty of times before, there's not that much real innovation going on in DeFi anymore, because I feel like 90% of DeFi has already been built, but that 10% of innovation that's going on is some groundbreaking stuff, some stuff that actually hasn't been done in traditional finance, or is not even possible in traditional finance, which is obviously very, very cool. So you can go check out Hyperdrive for yourself. We'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so over, I think it was yesterday or the day before, there was an exploit on CowSwap that got a lot of people nervous because a lot of people use CowSwap. Now, I'm a user of CowSwap myself. I love using it. It is one of the best decentralized exchanges out there. But the reason why people got so concerned about this was because no one knew what was actually happening, like what was actually exploited. Well, thankfully, it turned out that the users were not affected by this. The only thing that was exploited was a contract that held fees that were paid to the solvers on the CowSwap network. And because the solvers have to put up a bond in case of a hack or in case of something else that goes wrong, that actually covered the losses here. So I believe there was around $150,000 worth of DAI that was taken out of that contract, but that was it. And the reason why people were so nervous is because I saw something floating around crypto Twitter where someone said $78 million drained from CowSwap, which made no sense to me because CowSwap doesn't actually have any custody of funds because they don't have any liquidity providers. The orders are matched by these solvers, right? So you weren't going to lose any assets. People weren't going to lose any assets that they deposited into CowSwap because there were no assets deposited into there. Now, obviously, the bigger concern is the approval exploit, where for example, you would approve a contract to have unlimited spend allowance on a token that you have, and then if that was exploited, that was the main worry that your funds could be drained from that. But that's not what happened at all. So thankfully, the exploit was only limited to this one contract. It was only limited to those solver fees, and it didn't affect any end users there. But you can read CowSwap's tweet thread for a full breakdown on what happened here and on all details about the exploit for yourself, but just wanted to put that out there. Now, just in saying that, good hygiene generally is to revoke approvals especially on things you don't use anymore on your addresses, and also to revoke approvals or unlimited approvals because those things can be dangerous, especially, obviously when there's a potential approval exploit because your tokens could all be drained. Now, this doesn't apply to ETH. ETH is not an ERC20 token, so it doesn't have this issue, but it applies to pretty much everything else, including Wrapped ETH, because Wrapped ETH is an ERC20 token. So if you want to revoke things, Etherscan has a tool that you can use to revoke permissions off any contract that you want, basically, using their tool there on any address that you want. There's revoke.cash, which is also very popular. There's a bunch of them out there, but that's just good hygiene is doing that. Now, it does cost gas to do this, obviously, but the cost of gas to remove permissions or remove approvals is worth it to save yourself from any future exploits, especially on old contracts that you have not interacted with in a while and don't plan to interact with in the future. They may get exploited and you probably wouldn't even know, right? So, and that's the thing, like, even if you're not interacting with them anymore, if you approve them to have unlimited spending of your, let's just say, Matic tokens, for example, they could, if there was exploited, they could drain all your Matic tokens, even if you haven't touched it in years, because they have unlimited approval on your Matic tokens for an infinite period of time. And that's obviously not great. So definitely keep up to date with your approval hygiene. There's the Etherscan tool. There's revoke.cash. Go check them out for yourself. You can just go find them online there. All right, last up here was an update out of Influence here. So for those of you who don't know what Influence is, it is a grand strategy MMO that's being built on Starknet. It's a space-based MMO here as well. Everything is supposed to be on-chain. Now, they've put out a tweet where they said, years of hard work by incredibly talented teams has led to where we are now, the era of secure, scalable, and decentralized apps, games, and experiences. Now, I actually got a demo recently of Influence and what they're doing. They've actually been able to innovate to the point where everything is an on-chain transaction, but on Starknet, but you don't have to actually approve everything. So you can log in with something called Cartridge, which you can see on the little video here. And once you do that, it basically allows you to do one approval and then for that action, and then basically it'll just auto approve it. You won't have to sign it every single time, and it's still an on-chain transaction. So that's obviously huge from a UX perspective. And what's even cooler about this is that because it's all on-chain, it can actually be a truly decentralized game. You can actually have a truly decentralized state of what's happening on the game, and people can actually have confidence that they're not going to get rugged by a centralized service, or something is going to interfere with their gameplay experience because it's centralized, which I think is really, really cool, obviously. So if you haven't checked that Influence yet, you can. I believe you can play it right now. I can't remember if I got invited to a beta or something, but you can join the Discord channel to talk to them about it and see what and see what that's all about. Because it's currently live on testnet, so I'm not sure if that's an open testnet or not, but definitely join the Discord channel to check that out for yourself if you are into gaming and you are into strategy games and you are into space and all that sorts of stuff there. So yeah, I'll link this tweet thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.